The crystal chandelier above me shattered into 1,000 blinding stars as Margaret Winter's voice cut through the charity gala like a blade. "Gold digger," she screamed, her manicured finger trembling inches from my face. The orchestra stopped mid-note. 300 guests turned to stare at me. Aria Sullivan, the woman who'd apparently committed the unforgivable sin of marrying her son. My champagne glass slipped from my fingers, exploding against the marble floor. Margaret's face was twisted with rage. "You wormed your way into this family with your lies and your cheap dresses, thinking you could steal what generations built." I searched desperately for Daniel in the crowd, my husband of 2 years, the man who'd promised to stand by me always. He stood frozen near the champagne fountain, his face pale, his eyes refusing to meet mine. "Daniel?" My voice cracked. He didn't move, didn't speak, didn't defend me. Margaret grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "Get out of my house. Get out of my son's life. You'll get nothing from us. Not a penny. Not a memory, nothing." Security guards materialized, their hands firm on my shoulders. As they pushed me through the entrance, a butler pressed something into my hand, a sealed envelope with my name written in unfamiliar handwriting. The night air hit my face like a slap. Behind me, the mansion doors slammed shut with devastating finality. I stood on the marble steps in my evening gown, clutching the mysterious envelope, watching my entire life crumble into dust. The motel room smelled of cigarette smoke and broken dreams. $47 left in my account after the cab ride. I sat on the stained comforter, still wearing my gala dress, and stared at the envelope that had somehow found its way into my hand during my exile. With trembling fingers, I broke the wax seal. Inside, heavy cream paper unfolded to reveal words that would change everything. "Dear Aria, if you're reading this, then the truth is already in danger. They will try to erase what I've discovered. Don't let them. The vault holds answers, but trust no one in the family except." The letter ended there, torn deliberately. But something else fluttered out, a fragment of a document with clinical letterhead. Gene Tech Laboratories, DNA paternity analysis. 3 words remained visible, circled in red ink. 99.9% match confirmed. Charles Winters, Daniel's father, the patriarch who died 6 months before my wedding, had left me a note from beyond the grave. I'd met him only twice, brief encounters where he'd studied me with unsettling intensity, asked questions about my childhood, my mother who died when I was 3. "The truth is in danger," I whispered to the empty room. My reflection in the grimy mirror showed a woman I barely recognized, eyes blazing with something new. Not defeat, not shame, determination. If Charles Winters had risked his final words to warn me, then I would honor that warning. I would uncover what truth Margaret Winters was so desperate to bury. Midnight found me scaling the garden wall of the Winters estate like a thief. The security cameras had patterns, 30 seconds of blind spots between the east gate and the rose garden. I moved like a shadow, my heart hammering against my ribs. I slipped through the French doors to the conservatory, every step across the marble feeling like thunder. The grand staircase stretched before me, leading up to where Charles had kept his study, his secrets, his vault. 3 steps up, the floor creaked. "Going somewhere, Aria?" The voice froze my blood. I spun to find Theo Winters emerging from the shadows, a glass of whiskey in his hand. Daniel's cousin, the black sheep of the family, always watching from the edges with those calculating eyes. Words failed me, but Theo didn't call for security. Instead, he took a slow sip of his drink and smiled. "Relax. Margaret threw me out 3 months ago. Something about questioning her authority. You're looking for the vault." It wasn't a question. Theo moved closer. "You're not the only one Margaret kicked out," he whispered. "And you're not the only one who wants answers." Theo led me through hidden servant corridors built into the mansion's bones. "Charles showed me these when I was 12, he explained. Said every prison needs escape routes." We emerged before an ornate door. "Margaret disinherited me when I suggested she was cooking the books," he said, producing a key card. A hidden panel slid open, revealing a steel door. Theo punched in a code. Daniel changed this after the funeral, but rich idiots always use the same patterns. The vault door swung open. Theo went straight to one marked Personal, CW. He pulled it open, then froze. I peered over his shoulder and felt my stomach drop. Empty. Completely empty. The drawer was lined with velvet, indented where documents had clearly rested, but now contained nothing except dust. Someone cleaned this out, Theo said, his face pale in the vault's LED lighting. Red lights erupted along the ceiling. The alarm system screamed through the mansion. Theo grabbed my wrist. Someone triggered the secondary system. Move. We ran through the corridors, security guards shouting behind us, their boots pounding on marble. We burst into the night air, stumbling through the hedge maze. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness like searchlights hunting prisoners. We collapsed behind the garden wall, barely breathing as security swept past us. When the sounds faded, Theo turned to me. Listen carefully. I saw something the night before Charles's funeral. I saw Daniel leaving the main house around 2 a.m. carrying a briefcase, the kind lawyers use for sensitive documents. He was alone, moving fast, looking over his shoulder. He went to his car and drove off, came back an hour later empty-handed. The implication hit me like ice water. Daniel emptied the vault. I whispered. Theo nodded. Your husband stole whatever Charles wanted you to find, which means Daniel knows exactly what truth you're searching for, and he's the one hiding it. Daniel's corporate office occupied the 43rd floor of the Winters Tower. I walked past security, straight to his corner office. He looked up from his laptop, surprise flickering across his face. Aria, you shouldn't be here. I slammed my hands on his desk. What did you take from your father's vault? His eyes betrayed him, darting toward his briefcase. Don't lie to me, Daniel. Not anymore. Not after you let your mother throw me out like garbage. He stood abruptly. You don't understand what's at stake. That file, if it got out, if anyone saw what Charles documented, it would ruin everything. The company, the family name, mother's reputation. What's in the file? I demanded. Daniel's face twisted. The truth, he said simply. And the truth would destroy us all. The door burst open. Margaret stood there in her power suit. Security removed the trespasser from my son's office. Immediately, 4 guards appeared. Daniel stood frozen as they dragged me toward the elevator. The video went viral within hours. Someone had filmed security escorting me out, my struggles, my shouted questions. By morning, it had 17 million views. But something unexpected happened. The comments section became my army. She doesn't look like a gold digger to me, wrote thousands of strangers. My laptop pinged with a new email. Rosen Gwynn, investigative journalist. I've been following your situation. I believe the Winters family has been hiding something far bigger than a family dispute. I have access to financial records that might interest you. My phone rang, an unknown number. Aria Sullivan? This is Rosen Gwynn. I don't think you are who they say you are. In fact, I think I can prove you're exactly who you should be. Her answer sent electricity through my veins. Meet me at Lincoln Park in 1 hour. I think you might actually be the biggest story I've ever uncovered. Rosa met me on a park bench, a leather folder clutched to her chest. I've been investigating the Winters family for 2 years, she began. But 3 months ago, I found something unusual. She opened the folder, spreading documents between us. Notice these payments? Every month for 25 years, $50,000 transferred from Daniel Winters' personal account to Gene Tech Laboratories. My blood turned to ice. Gene Tech. That's the lab on Charles's DNA report fragment. Rosa nodded. The payments started 9 months before your birth. They've never stopped. That's not testing fees, Aria. That's hush money. She pulled out another document. Gene Tech's physical address. It's 3 blocks from the hospital where you were born. Want to guess whose name appears in their records from 25 years ago? I could barely breathe. Charles Winters. Rosa pulled out one final document, a faded laboratory requisition form with Charles's signature, dated 9 months before my birth. Charles tested someone's DNA before you were even born. And Daniel has been paying to keep those results buried ever since. Theo showed up at my motel room at midnight, carrying a shoebox. Found this in the attic of the guest house. Been there for decades, hidden behind insulation. He dumped the contents onto the bed. Photographs, dozens of them. One picture stopped my heart. Charles Winters, 20 years younger, standing with his arm around a woman in nurse's scrubs. She was beautiful, with eyes that looked hauntingly familiar. The date, June 15th, 1998. That's 9 months before I was born. I whispered. Look at her face, Theo urged, pulling out his phone and opening a photo of me. He held them side by side. The resemblance was unmistakable.
Same nose, same jawline.
According to the writing on the back, her name was Aria Sullivan, Charles's private nurse during his first cancer scare. More photographs, Charles and Elena at a beach, at a restaurant. The last photo showed Elena pregnant, Charles beside her with an expression of pure joy. Rosa burst through the door. Aria, I found Aria Sullivan's death certificate. She died in a car accident 3 years after you were born. Her obituary lists a daughter, Aria Sullivan, aged 3 years. Rosa grabbed my shoulders. What if you were the hidden child Margaret erased? The private genetic testing clinic was tucked into a suburban strip mall. The technicians swabbed the inside of my cheek. We're comparing your sample against the genetic profile on file for Charles Winters. Results in 48 hours. 48 hours felt like 48 years. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Rosa stayed with me, making phone calls. Theo brought more discovered fragments, financial statements showing Charles had tried to modify his will multiple times before his death, each attempt blocked by Margaret's lawyers. Day 2 arrived. My phone rang at exactly 10 a.m., the genetics clinic. I answered the speaker. Miss Sullivan, your results are ready. The DNA comparison shows. The technician paused. This is unusual. You show a 99.9% match to Charles Winters. The probability of paternity is essentially certain. Charles Winters was your biological father. The room tilted. Rosa caught me as my legs gave out. Theo's face had gone pale. I was the daughter, the hidden heir, the truth Margaret had been desperate to erase. I'm the daughter they erased, I whispered, and then the world went black. I woke to find Theo and Rosa arguing. My phone buzzed, 23 missed calls from Daniel and one from Margaret herself. What reconciliation? I asked. Theo showed me a text from Margaret. We need to discuss recent developments. Come to the house tomorrow evening. Just family. Let's settle this privately. Every instinct screamed danger, but I felt a cold satisfaction. I'll go, I announced. She thinks I'm weak. She thinks she can manipulate me into silence. She has no idea I have proof. We spent the day preparing. Rosa coached me on media strategy. Theo provided blueprints of the mansion. I purchased a recording device, backed up all evidence to 3 different cloud services. Margaret's call came at 8 p.m. Aria, dear, I've been too harsh. Family is family after all. Come tomorrow at 7. The lie was transparent. I'll be there, I said sweetly. I looked at my reflection in the motel mirror. The frightened woman from the gala was gone. In her place stood someone harder, sharper, ready to claim what was rightfully hers. Margaret had staged the dinner with cameras positioned to live stream what she expected to be my humiliation. For transparency, she explained, the public deserves to see our family reconciliation. She had no idea every camera would capture what came next. Daniel sat at one end of the table, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Margaret presided like a queen. Aria, I want to apologize for my harsh words at the gala. She began for the cameras. I took my seat calmly. Before we begin, I want to share something with everyone watching. I pulled out copies of the DNA results, sliding them across the table and holding one up to the camera. These are DNA test results comparing my genetic profile to that of Charles Winters. They show a 99.9% probability of paternity. Charles Winters was my biological father, which makes me his daughter and legal heir to the Winters estate. Margaret's face transformed from calm to pure rage. She lunged across the table, grabbing the results and tearing them apart. Lies. Fake documents. But Theo stood, distributing more copies. There are 50 copies, I said quietly, and the originals are with 3 different law firms. Daniel finally spoke. Mother, stop. She's telling the truth. I've known since before we met. Father told me everything about Elena, about Aria, about how he'd tried for years to find his daughter. Margaret collapsed into her chair as the world watched the matriarch finally crack. By morning, the video had 50 million views. News vans surrounded the mansion. But then someone leaked an email thread, correspondence between Daniel and Margaret from before my wedding. She knows who I'm marrying, Daniel had written. Margaret's response: then you'll handle it. Make her fall in love. Marry her quickly, and ensure she never learns the truth. My entire marriage had been a calculated strategy to neutralize the threat I represented. The romance I'd believed in had been a mission from the start. More leaks followed. Margaret's embezzlement, her cruelty, evidence that she'd hidden Charles's attempts to contact me throughout my childhood. By afternoon, Daniel had vanished, fleeing to South America. My lawyer called. They want to settle quietly. I looked at the video showing Margaret's breakdown and smiled. Tell them we'll see them in court. Theo called at 3 a.m. I found something. The real will. We met at the estate and crept to Charles's study. I knocked over this antique clock. It broke open, and inside, he held up a document sealed in plastic. This is Charles's true final will, dated 3 weeks before his death. The language was clear and devastating. To my daughter, Aria Sullivan, I leave the majority controlling share of Winters Industries, all properties, and assets. I acknowledge I failed her as a father by allowing Margaret to hide her existence. This is acknowledgement of her rightful place in this family. We photographed every page. As dawn broke, Theo's phone buzzed. Margaret Winters files new will, claims father changed mind before death. She'd produced a different will, dated 1 day after Charles's hidden document. She forged it. I breathed. Theo nodded. Can we prove her will is fake before a judge accepts it? I looked at Charles's real will, his intentions unmistakable. We're going to court. Let the whole world watch as we expose every lie. The courthouse steps were packed with cameras and crowds. My legal team was led by Victoria Palmer, a fierce litigator who'd taken my case pro bono. Inside, the courtroom was standing room only. Victoria's opening statement was surgical. She outlined Charles's relationship with Elena, the DNA evidence, the suspicious payments, and the hidden will. The defendant has spent 25 years erasing a young woman's existence to maintain her grip on power. Today, that ends. Margaret's attorney painted me as a con artist. These DNA results, this hidden will, all manufactured to support an elaborate fraud. Then Victoria dropped her bomb. Your Honor, the plaintiff requests that both parties submit to a public DNA test conducted by a court-appointed geneticist, with results revealed in this courtroom. Judge Hamilton ruled, I'll allow it. Both parties will provide samples tomorrow. Results will be televised. The courtroom had been transformed into a laboratory. Every major network carried the proceedings live. Margaret looked pale as they swabbed her cheek first. Then it was my turn. Results in 2 hours, the geneticist announced. The waiting was excruciating. Finally, the bailiff called us back. The judge handed the results to the court clerk. DNA analysis confirms Aria Sullivan shares genetic markers consistent with biological offspring relationship to Charles Winters, with 99.9% probability of paternity. The courtroom erupted. Margaret stood suddenly. He betrayed me. 30 years of marriage, and he betrayed me with that nurse, then tried to give everything to her bastard child. I built this empire. Some illegitimate child doesn't deserve what I created. Security dragged her from the courtroom, still screaming, while cameras captured every moment of her complete unraveling. The next day brought an unexpected witness. Bernard Phillips, Margaret's family attorney for 30 years, requested to testify. He looked ancient as he took the stand, hands shaking. Charles met Aria Sullivan when she was his nurse. Phillips began. They fell in love. When Aria became pregnant, Charles was overjoyed. He wanted to leave Margaret, acknowledge the child, start over. I convinced him it would destroy the company. When Aria died in that car accident, Charles wanted to bring 3-year-old Aria into the family. Margaret refused. Phillips pulled out a folder. He sent birthday cards every year. Margaret intercepted them. He established a trust fund for her education. Margaret had me transfer the funds to Daniel's account instead. Every attempt Charles made to reach Aria, Margaret blocked them all. And the will we found, is that his true final will? Victoria asked. Phillips nodded.
Yes.
3 weeks before his death, Charles called me to his study. We drafted it together, witnessed by his doctor and another attorney. He told me to hide it where Margaret would never find it. Victoria showed him Margaret's will. And this document, Phillips laughed bitterly.
Forgery.
That will is fake, created months after Charles died to maintain her power. Margaret lunged from her seat, attacking Phillips physically, screaming about betrayal. Court security pulled her off as she clawed at him, her face twisted with uncontrollable rage. The trial was effectively over. Margaret was charged with forgery, fraud, witness tampering, and assault. The Winters empire began crumbling as board members resigned and investigations multiplied. My phone kept ringing. Daniel finally returned from hiding. I answered on the 15th call. I need to see you. His voice was hollow. We met in a park at sunset. He looked terrible. I want to testify against my mother. Tell the court everything I know. He pulled out a flash drive. Everything's on here. Emails, recorded conversations, financial documents showing how Mother destroyed evidence of your existence. Bank records proving she embezzled millions. Even a recording of her admitting to forging Father's will. If I do this, Daniel continued, I lose everything. But I need to do it anyway. I looked at this man I thought I loved. I'll accept your testimony, but on one condition. You do it publicly. On live television. You confess everything to the world. You face what you've done in front of everyone. 3 days later, Daniel sat in a television studio facing the most watched news anchor in the country. I watched from backstage as the cameras went live. My name is Daniel Winters, and I need to tell you about the systematic corruption at the heart of my family. For 45 minutes, he confessed everything. The intercepted letters, the stolen trust funds. I was sent to befriend her, to make her fall in love with me, to marry her quickly before she could learn who she really was. I told myself I was protecting the family, but we'd become monsters. He described helping Margaret forge the will, detailed financial crimes spanning decades, turned over names and bank accounts. When asked if he'd known Aria was his half-sister when he married her, Daniel nodded. I learned the truth after we were engaged. My father begged me to protect Aria. Instead, I told my mother, and we conspired to keep her ignorant and powerless. I expect to be arrested. I expect Aria will never forgive me, and she shouldn't. What I did was unforgivable. He paused, tears streaming. To Aria, I'm sorry. Those words are meaningless, I know, but they're all I have left. I walked onto the set before anyone could stop me. Daniel's eyes widened. Daniel Winters destroyed my life for the power he's now throwing away, I said. He lied, manipulated, and stole years I can never reclaim. Forgiveness? I forgive you, Daniel. Not for you, for me. Because carrying hatred is a burden I won't bear anymore. I turned to the camera. This is what truth costs. Relationships, money, reputation, everything. But it's worth it. Because living with lies is worse than losing everything. Power without integrity is just poison wearing a crown. Judge Hamilton took only 4 hours to render his decision. This court finds that Charles Winters' will, discovered hidden in his study, is authentic and legally binding. The competing will presented by Margaret Winters is a forgery. Therefore, all assets are hereby awarded to Aria Sullivan, including controlling shares of Winters Industries, all properties, and financial holdings. Margaret Winters is ordered to immediately surrender all disputed assets and will face separate criminal proceedings. I'd won. Completely, utterly won. But as I watched Margaret being led away in handcuffs, I felt no triumph, just exhaustion. At the press conference, I deviated from my prepared statement. I'm donating half of the inheritance to establish foundations for children who've been abandoned or hidden by powerful families. The Winters empire will be restructured to focus on ethical business practices. And the name will change to the Sullivan Winters Foundation. Both names matter. Both parents deserve to be remembered. 1 week after the verdict, a lawyer arrived at my office with a sealed envelope from Charles to be delivered 1 week after my daughter claims her inheritance. I waited until alone to open it. The letter began with 2 words that made me cry. Dear daughter, if you're reading this, then you've won. You fought against Margaret's lies and claimed what was always rightfully yours. I'm proud of you, though I have no right to pride. I wasn't there for your childhood. I was a coward who let Margaret bully me into hiding the best thing I ever created. He told the story of meeting Elena. She was sunshine in human form. When she told me about you, I felt joy I'd never experienced. I wanted to leave everything for the 2 of you. I should have. That's my eternal regret. Charles detailed every blocked attempt to reach me. The trust fund, the cards, the private investigator he'd hired when I was 16. Margaret discovered him and paid him off. She was always better at manipulation than I was at protecting what mattered. The last paragraph broke me. I know I failed you. I know sorry is insufficient after abandoning you for 23 years. But you deserve to know you were wanted. You were loved. Every day I didn't reach out was a day I hated myself a little more. You are my daughter, and that's the only thing I ever did that actually mattered. Love always, Dad. Inside the envelope's final fold, I found a silver pendant, a locket containing 2 tiny photographs. Elena's smiling face and a photo of me as a baby. I clasped it around my neck, feeling the weight of heritage, loss, and love. 6 months later, I stood before the Sullivan Winters Foundation Board, presenting the restructuring plan. Winters Industries was built on exploitation. I began. Low wages, environmental destruction, political corruption. We're burning it down and building something new. I showed new initiatives, living wages for all employees, carbon-neutral operations, partnership programs with affected communities. Some old guard members protested, but my new investors voted overwhelmingly in favor. This isn't charity. This is survival. The old way of doing business is dying. We approved funding for the Women's Shelter Network, established a whistleblower protection fund, and committed to releasing all documents related to past crimes. If we did wrong, we'll admit it and make restitution. That's how you rebuild trust. After the meeting, Theo approached. Someone's here to see you. I opened my office door to find Daniel sitting in the visitor's chair, looking impossibly older. Daniel stood carefully. He wore jeans and a simple shirt, no designer labels, no symbols of wealth. I didn't think you'd see me. I've been in therapy, working through the manipulation I experienced and inflicted. He pulled out a folder. These are the divorce papers, already signed. No contests, no negotiations. I'm not asking for anything. I opened it. Why now? He smiled sadly. Because my hope for your forgiveness was still selfish. You don't owe me redemption. You don't owe me anything. No, I don't. I agreed quietly. Do you know what the hardest part was? Not the lies, not even the manipulation. It was that I actually loved you. The person I thought you were, I genuinely loved him. And that person never existed. Daniel nodded, tears streaming. I know, and I'm sorry. So here's my action. I'm leaving, stepping away from your life, from any claim on your attention. I walked him to the door. Daniel, I said as he reached for the handle. Redemption isn't words. It's distance. It's living a better life far away from the people you hurt. It's becoming someone your father would have been proud of. The criminal trial concluded with Margaret convicted on 14 counts. Judge Hamilton sentenced her to 15 years in federal prison. Margaret stood to make a final statement. The Winters name dies with me. Everything ends in disgrace because of one illegitimate child's vindictiveness. I stood.
No.
Winter's name doesn't die. It finally means something. It means truth over lies. Justice over corruption. A father's love triumphing over a stepmother's cruelty. As Margaret passed my seat, she hissed, "You'll never escape being the bastard he hid away." I smiled. "You're right. I'll never escape it. I'll celebrate it. Because being the daughter Charles loved is infinitely better than being the wife he regretted." As Margaret disappeared through the courtroom doors, I felt a chapter closing, not with triumph or revenge, but with quiet completion. The woman who'd tried to erase me had been erased by her own crimes. 1 year after claiming my inheritance, I stood before a crowd at the grand opening of the Winters Women's Institute. The building had been Margaret's prized possession. Now it housed counseling offices, legal aid services, education programs, and shelter space for women escaping powerful families. This institute exists because I was lucky, I told the crowd. Lucky that my father left evidence. Lucky that brave people risk themselves for truth. But millions of women aren't lucky. They're erased by families who value reputation over humanity. Behind me hung 2 photographs, Charles Winters and Aria Sullivan side by side. These people represent what happens when we choose truth. I explained. The programs were comprehensive, everything I'd needed and couldn't find, now available to others. After the ceremony, I found a quiet moment in the library. I stood before my parents' photographs, touching the silver locket around my neck. "I was never after their gold," I whispered. "Only the truth." And somehow, the truth gave me everything else. Purpose, legacy, the chance to help others. My phone buzzed. "Press wants interviews, you ready?" I took one last look at my parents' faces, at the legacy I'd reclaimed and transformed. Ready. Let's show them what truth looks like when it finally wins. As I walked back toward the cameras, I felt complete for the first time. I knew who I was. Aria Sullivan, daughter of Charles Winters and Aria Sullivan. Not a gold digger, not an outsider. Just a woman who'd fought for truth and won, who'd taken pain and transformed it into purpose, who'd been given gold but chose to forge it into something that actually mattered, a legacy of truth, justice, and healing for all the daughters the world tries to forget.